90.3 WHPC now presents Law You Should Know. The law affects every aspect of our lives, our home, our jobs, and our recreational activities. Now, learn about the law and how to protect yourself against the loss of your liberty or property, and learn how to stand up for your rights and seek compensation when you have been wronged. Your host for Law You Should Know is attorney Kenneth J. Landau, a past dean of the Nassau Academy of Law, and frequently lectures to lawyers on ethics and avoiding problems with clients, and to the public on how to choose and use lawyers. This is Law You Should Know on the voice of Nassau Community College, 90.3 WHPC.
Hi, this is Ken Landau, and welcome to Law You Should Know. Today we're going to discuss Title IX and all the ramifications, especially for college students and college administrators and, of course, parents. If you know someone who's attending college or going to attend college or in college or in a university setting. Our guest is Cynthia A. Augello, and she is a founding member of the Augello Law Group, where she practices education law and also defends and investigates complaints on college campuses. And she is also the chair of the Publications Committee of Nassau County Bar Association. Cynthia, welcome to Law You Should Know.
Hi, Ken. Thank you so much for having me.
You handle many cases involving Title IX, and just explain briefly what Title IX encompasses.
Sure. Title IX is basically about equal rights for the genders in the college setting. It used to be more geared towards sports, and now it has to do with admissions and classes and all of the opportunities, scholarships and everything else. And the big focus on it, because it is a huge statute, but the big focus on it really involves, sexual assault and sexual harassment on college campuses. It also applies to any school, actually, that gets federal funding.
And this is, unfortunately, a growing topic of concern for parents and students and administrators out there. And what are some of the, let's say, the best practices that for a college in preventing and, if necessary, investigating sexual assault on campus or on a off-campus related setting?
Sure. So all colleges are required under Title IX, if there is an incident that is reported of a sexual assault or something like that, to investigate, regardless if the person who is making the complaint wants it to be investigated, because a lot of times, understandably, they do not, but the colleges have the absolute obligation to do so. All colleges have to have a Title IX coordinator who obviously coordinates all of the Title IX investigations. They also all need to also have a policy, a Title IX policy that details what Title IX is, what it protects, and what the investigation process is.
And sometimes there are administrative procedures on a campus setting based on the investigation. Yes.
So this it involves all the investigations have to be done in a certain period of time. It has to be done in a certain manner. Again, all of that stuff is spelled out, and I think it's a good practice for the colleges to regularly train students and faculty, because this doesn't just involve students. This also involves faculty members too, can trigger the Title IX policy. So I think it's good practice for everybody to have regular training for all of their new students, or yearly training for all of their students on the policies.
For students on both sides of the equations, what are some best practices for avoiding problems with Title IX, either being an alleged offender or being an alleged victim?
Right. So, most of the complaints that are received fall semester, freshman year for most students. They occur at other times as well, but that's where the majority of them come in. So, being a parent myself, you constantly worry what your child is doing and everything else. And we talk to our children and try to tell them, don't drink and don't do this and don't do drugs. And they're going to kind of do what they want to do. But I think it's kind of the job of the parents at this point to explain to their children the ramifications of partying a little too hard in college.
And that explanation should be on both sides. People who might be the aggressor and people who might fall prey and be the victim. So what are some best practices if people are moving away to campus, they're going to a campus event, they're going to a college or a fraternity party to avoid problems either as the, let's say, aggressor or the victim?
So I think it's a good thing for everybody. Everybody knows that they're gonna party. They're going to do things, right? I think it's great to tell your kids to always do it in numbers. Be with somebody who you feel is going to help you. Make sure that if your child is out doing something, that they're never alone, right? And that works for both sides. If you're going to be the person who's accused or if you're going to be, the alleged, victim, I think it's great to have other people because then you have witnesses to whatever happened, and I think that that's definitely a good thing to have because, again, we're not going to stop the kids from doing things, but it's just if they're put in this position, make sure that you're in the safest position possible.
And that goes on the other side, too. You want someone who can intervene, act as a buffer, a timeout, if you will, from someone putting themselves in a situation they may regret.
Yes, absolutely. And yeah, that works on both sides. If you're the I don't really want to gender it in this way, but, if you're a male, you want to make sure you have male friends around you that are going to stop you from maybe being too aggressive or being put in a position where you might be accused of something. If you're a female attending, you want to make sure you have friends with you there too, to make sure that they could stop you. Oh, you've had too many drinks. Come home with me now. Let's go. Let's get out of this situation, or not letting them walk off to a bedroom or someplace with somebody where something might happen.
You want to de-escalate the situation and get each person involved to a safe place.
Absolutely.
Because something may happen they'll regret and may cause them trauma for the rest of their lives.
Yeah, and having done these investigations, it's never easy. You've got people crying, you've got people's lives being ruined. The people who are accused are usually taken out of the school, taken off the campus. If they're involved in sports, they're removed from those. It impacts scholarships. It does things like that. If you're the victim, your life is forever changed because of what has happened to you.
And if you're in the first group, you may get expelled from the school. You may lose a scholarship. You may lose your career depending on what's happening and whether there's a criminal investigation or prosecution. And it's going to strap your resources and your life will never be the same again.
Absolutely. And it's expensive, too, because both sides, and definitely the person who's accused, is usually going to get an attorney. And attorneys, we all know, are not cheap. So on top of the expense of school and everything else, you're now spending money on lawyers to try to keep you in school. And sometimes somebody's accused and, if they're found either that they did it or if they didn't do it, they have to change schools anyway.
And you may not have intent. Things just get carried away because you may be incapacitated. You may be going with the flow. You may not think about the consequences.
Yeah, I mean, remember being in our 20s, you go, you have fun. You're not necessarily at a point in your life where you're thinking about consequences because, you might see it on a TV show or something and think, oh, that'll never happen to me until it happens to you.
And on the other side, someone may be alone. They may be vulnerable. They may be trying to go along to get along, and it may change their life too.
Absolutely.
Even if there's no criminal prosecution, just the events, the trauma, they may not, even though there's no penalty, they may not be able to continue their studies or the career as they intended.
Absolutely. If it's one of those things you see a lot, and there are no retaliation provisions and things like that, but if you've accused somebody and it turns out that the finding is that, it didn't occur or, something didn't happen, people know that you made that accusation, and then you have to worry about how are people going to treat you. So you do see a lot of times people will leave the school after they've been a victim of whatever.
And of course, you never want to make any false accusations, but sometimes your memories may be cloudy because of what happened on both sides.
Yep, it happens all the time. When there's substances involved, whether it be drinking or, smoking or whatever it happens to be, it impairs your memory, it impairs your judgment, and impairs everything. And that goes for your memories down the road. So you could perceive something to have happened, or you could remember it some way, and it's not necessarily accurate. It's not that you don't feel like that didn't happen to you, but your memory is a little cloudy, and the investigation process is harsh.
And we're going to talk about the investigation process and some of the potential outcomes, all of them very difficult. But I want to remind our listeners that we're talking with attorney Cynthia A. Augello, and she's a member of the Augello Law Group, where she practices education law and also employment law and defends employers. And she also acts as an investigator for colleges and universities when they're confronting these issues. She's also the editor-in-chief of the Nassau Lawyer and chair of the Nassau County Bar Association's Publications Committee. You're listening to Law You Should Know here on 90.3 WHPC, the voice of Nassau Community College in Garden City, New York. If you missed any portion of the program or you want to tell someone else about it, just go to the podcast at nccradio.org. So for better or worse, some alleged event has occurred, and it's reported to the college. And again, you mentioned also that a person who thinks they're a victim can and perhaps should report it to the police and seek medical treatment or evaluation. But what happens at the college level?
So when the college receives a complaint, and that complaint doesn't have to be from the victim. It could be from a friend. So, that's, again, the beauty of traveling with friends, because a lot of times the victim is too ashamed, too scared, too nervous to approach the college and tell them what happened. So a lot of times, we'll get those complaints from a friend, somebody who was at the event and saw what happened. So what happens there is the Title IX coordinator will reach out, get the complaint, write it up, get the complaint, find out what happened, and then they will engage investigators like myself to investigate the complaint. And what we do there is we interview, typically the first person that we talk to is the person who brought the complaint, whether that be the complainant or a friend or whatever, and we try to get all of the information out of them. And that being who was there, what happened. It gets very, very detailed, to find out exactly what happened, because we need to find out then if the stories match. We'll then talk to, any other witnesses, and we'll also talk to the person who was accused. The accused person typically will want an attorney present. If the police have been notified, it gets a little sticky because the person who's being accused has to be nervous about making statements that can then be used in a police investigation against them. So typically they will want an attorney involved. That there are nuances there as to whether it's a student or if it is a teacher or something like that. Then what happens is we gather evidence. And that evidence can be physical evidence, text messages, voicemail messages, anything like that you might have. Instagram, posts, Snapchats to the extent that they haven't been erased, and things like that. We've gotten videos. We've gotten lots of things. So we go take a look at all the evidence. We see if there's any more witnesses. We try to get as many as humanly possible. The investigator then writes up a report. It is not a a report where we make any kind of recommendations or anything like that. We just simply report exactly what was told to us.
So there might be some facts. And do you make any conclusions?
We do not.
Okay.
That is up to the hearing officers at the college.
Okay. So with the hearing officer at the college, just sitting as a judge, is there anyone who sits as a prosecutor?
So what happens is the Title IX office will ask the questions. So they'll kind of have a hearing. After the report is done, they get a chance to review the report. They see if they want any additional information or additional evidence that maybe the investigator didn't know to get or, didn't have. Then they set a hearing. The hearing is there is somebody who asks questions. The individuals are allowed to have attorneys present who are then allowed to ask questions of each other. It's almost like a trial where there's evidence is presented, cross-examination, direct examination, that whole
thing. But the hearing, that's sort of an objective person. They just bring certain facts out before the hearing officer?
So the hearing officer just asks questions just flat out, and then...
And they act as the judge?
There's a panel, typically.
And who's on the panel?
So it is usually specified in their Title IX policy who the hearing officers are. And it could be anybody. It's usually not, they always have to make sure there's no conflicts. So if students are involved, it can't be a teacher who might have one of those students. It's typically a Title IX officer and then some other people from either administration or faculty, and they have a rotating set.
And what are they trying to find?
They are asking the questions to back up the information that's in the report. They might ask some questions that are based on their conclusions, based on what they've read in the report. And they are trying to figure out, just get to the facts of what happened.
And what's the end of that process?
So at the end of the process, they get together and they make a determination as to whether or not the complaint has been substantiated or it is not. And what they do then is they have a penalty phase if it has been substantiated.
And the penalty would be for the alleged offender, or is there a penalty for the victim if they don't feel it happened?
There's usually no penalty for the victim because they don't want to prevent people from making complaints. There could be penalties if it is obviously a fake complaint or something, just a spiteful complaint when it never happened. There might be penalties for that.
And there could be different interpretations of the facts because people were under diminished capacity.
Correct. And that's usually the case. The stories don't usually 100% line up, but you can kind of get an idea, especially with the physical evidence.
And the panel will analyze the videotape or whatever other evidence there is.
They will look at everything. They will look at the summaries of the investigations, the reports, whatever physical evidence there is, which again could be a lot of things.
And the worst thing that would happen to the alleged perpetrator would be expulsion?
Well, from the college point, yes.
Okay. From that investigation. They're not going to voluntarily turn their file over to district attorney or...
They're not going to voluntarily do it, but they could be required to.
And also whatever the information the victim gave them in terms if there's a criminal investigation or criminal defense, whatever they said might also become part of the prosecution's file or defense file.
Correct.
Does the school have any other experts, let's say, evaluate the medical or psychological persona of either party? Typically,
no. That's usually not involved. Again, they're just really trying to avoid sexual assaults and things on campus. And there's usually code of conduct violations that are in there too. So usually somebody's getting in trouble for something, whether it's drinking on campus or it's, doing something that they shouldn't be doing. And all of that is used to try to tighten up what's going on at the school.
And they're not going to make a criminal referral. It would be up to the victim to file a complaint with the district attorney office or the attorney general or some prosecutorial agency for them to investigate or pursue criminal action.
Right. And the Title IX investigator will usually tell or suggest to the victim that they go seek, goes to the police, go make a complaint and things like that. The only exception to whether or not the school will do it automatically is if the person is somehow under 18.
And are the parents brought in if the person's over 18?
The parents are not. The parents usually find out, but, they are adults and things like that. But there's usually the student will tell their parents.
And 18 is the age of majority, so the parents have no right to make a decision, to insist on anything.
Correct.
It's all up to the child if they're 18. Then if they're not 18, there might be other issues.
Right, and then there's FERPA laws that actually prevent the school from telling the parents certain things, so once the children are over 18.
Can the parents ask in advance for the child to sign some kind of waiver or consent?
There are FERPA waivers, and the student can sign that saying that the parents can have access.
And that could be before or after?
Yes.
Okay. I just want to remind our listeners we're talking about Title IX, especially as it relates to sexual assault investigations by the college or university and what the rights to the victim or the alleged defendant might be. Our guest is Cynthia A. Augello, and she investigates these matters on behalf of colleges and also works on employment law issues, mainly defending employers. She's also the editor-in-chief of the National Lawyer and the chair of the Publications Committee. Cynthia, let's just and you're listening to Law You Should Know here on 90.3 WHPC, the voice of Nassau Community College in Garden City, Long Island, New York. If you missed any portion of this program or you want to tell someone else about it, go to the podcast at nccradio.org. Cynthia, just tell us about your website and what information you have about these issues on your website.
Sure. So on my website, there are a few blogs and things like that talking about the latest updates in Title IX and a lot of other issues. Best practices, things like that are all on there. My website is www.augello.com.
And there are really no perfect outcomes here. It's all a very sad event. Hopefully no one will be prosecuted unjustly, and hopefully the possible victim will go on and recover from whatever happened to them.
Yeah, and the colleges are also very good about giving resources for therapists and things like that, so that the victims can go and get the help that they need, and they're very good about trying to work with them to make sure that happens. It is very sad on both sides. For a long time, Title IX was criticized because there wasn't sufficient, or it wasn't being utilized properly, due process for the actual people who are being accused.
And what is the standard? Because we know it's a high standard in a criminal case. Is there a lower standard in the college process?
So they basically just look at it and say, okay, what rule, what code of conduct, what was violated, if anything? So they'd have to make a determination that it's more likely than not that something happened. They're never going to be completely sure.
And if either side doesn't like that finding, are they stuck with it, or is there any appellate process?
There is an appeal process.
And that's within the college,
yes,
not with the courts.
Correct.
So, again, a possible victim has the right to, contact the police or the district attorney, have their own investigation.
Absolutely, and they should.
And they should.
Yes.
What other advice do you have for someone, especially a first-year student, just preventing themselves from getting caught up in this situation?
Again, it's just a matter of making sure you make smart choices, making sure that you have friends with you.
So it's encouraged for people. It's good for people on both sides to have friends with them.
Absolutely.
And those friends should try to prevent something from happening.
Yep, and it's just make sure that if you're a parent, that you're watching your children's behavior. I know they're away at school, but if your child starts having behavioral issues, things like that, starts withdrawing, you might want to just make sure that they haven't had some sort of an event.
And they can a parent ask the campus to investigate, even though they may not be in the loop? Who would they contact?
So if the parents think that something has happened to their child or has confirmation, or if a friend goes to the parents and tells them, the parents can absolutely call the Title IX coordinator at the college.
And hopefully they have some type of advisor, maybe an RA, or maybe some type of academic counselor.
The RAs are usually very helpful because they're around for the events. They see the comings and the goings of the students in the dorm rooms and things like that, and they can witness things too. So they are actually often witnesses into these cases.
And should college students be careful about who they let onto the premises, admit to a dorm, invite to an on-campus event?
Yep, and there's usually rules in the college handbook about what you're allowed to do, who you're allowed to have in your dorm. If you have visitors, there's a visiting protocol and things like that, so that the college has a record of who's walking around their campus.
And as we talked about earlier in the show, someone on both sides should be sort of the designated intervener or be a buddy to the person on either side and keep them from getting involved in a situation that may haunt them for the rest of their lives.
Absolutely. It's almost like the designated driver. You have one of those. You should have a designated sober buddy with you at all times. Somebody who, tonight it's my night not to have any fun, just to make sure everybody stays safe.
But who also sticks with people, so
Yes.
they're never alone on either side. And you also don't want to be careful on egging someone on or challenging them, because you may face criminal charges too. You never know what the laws are out there, or you may face disciplinary charges, or you may just feel guilty.
Absolutely. No, absolutely. I mean, it's definitely, like I said, definitely great idea to stay with people. If you go out in a group, people don't usually travel alone. So if you go out in a group, just have one person who's going to stay with the group the whole time that can watch everything that's going on and prevent things from happening.
Okay. I just want to remind everyone this has been presented as information only, but you should think about your situation, perhaps act as that intervener or buddy. Our guest has been Cynthia A. Augello, talking to us about protecting yourself while you're on campus and avoiding problems with Title IX. You're listening to Law You Should Know here on 90.3 WHPC, the voice of Nassau Community College in Garden City, New York. And please join next week at this same time for another program on Law You Should Know.
When severe weather causes telecom network outages, the FCC recommends that you call 911 only when necessary and limit non-emergency calls. Avoid repetitive redialing to minimize network congestion. Try texting if a call doesn't go through. Conserve cell phone power and turn off your phone when not in use. If evacuated, forward landline calls to your cell phone and use your outgoing message to update your status. For more info, go to fcc.gov/emergency.